Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Skokie, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. This is a space for thought-provoking, unscripted conversations with people from all walks of life, united by the shared mission of healing ourselves while promoting healing in the world around us. Whether you're here to find inspiration, learn, or simply feel seen, you're invited on this journey of healing from the individual to the collective. Thanks for joining me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno, and I'm super excited that you're here. If you didn't listen a couple episodes ago and you're just tuning in today, Conversations with a Wounded Healer has been wounded healing for 7 years. The podcast turned 7 on March 5th, and I can't believe it. And we're celebrating with a big time giveaway. And I need to hear from you in order for you to sign up for the giveaway. So you need to go to tinyurl.com/CWH giveaway 25. And there's a shitload of awesome prizes that you can win, stuff from me and stuff from folks who've been on the podcast before. So it's a lot of stuff. I'll just go ahead and tell you again because you need to know. 17% discount because 7 wasn't enough. So 17% discount on any workshops, groups, or events hosted by Head Heart Business Therapy in 2025. A Ripple deck, which is a really cool deck with healing cards in it by Right Use of Power Institute. A signed copy of the book Healing Justice by Loretta Piles. A signed copy of Being White Today by Shelley Touchluck and Christine Saxman, because we still do DEI in this house. A free spiritual reading with Virginia Castillo. A free coaching consulting session with Michelle Winston. A free entry into a Right Use of Power Basics training. A free month of embodied transformation membership with Comfy Fitness, a free lightning coaching session by Allison Stager, and lastly, a 1-for-2-for 17% off Create Your Program with Annie Schuessler, or 50% off a one-on-one business coaching strategy session with Annie Schuessler. So a lot of amazing stuff for you to win. tinyurl.com/CWH giveaway 25. Give me your email. Fill that motherfucker out, and then you get to potentially win all that cool shit. So, commercial's over. Now we move to today's guest. Today's guest is Heather Lovegood, and she's a special human. And this interview, 2 episodes this week and next week, we explore Heather's journey starting in nursing and dialysis to becoming a holistic bodyworker and lymphatic drainage specialist. And we dig really deep into spirituality and Heather's own transformative experience. She had an experience that really helped her heal from religious trauma. So we're going to really get into that. And while we're there, we dig into spirituality, science, indigenous wisdom, and all of that juicy stuff in healing work. And you're going to hear me refer to Anne and lovingly call her out in this episode. So at the time we recorded this was, I think, probably back in October. Man, I record these way ahead of time. You'll hear me refer to Anne because I didn't know Anne was leaving me yet. But I have a feeling she'll listen to this and she will giggle at my loving call out for her. So let me tell you about Heather. So a longtime student of life, Heather Lovegood's own healing path led her to the healing arts, specifically bodywork. Drawing from these tools both for her personal practice and her work with clients has been the deepest gift and greatest of teachers. So please enjoy this amazing part 1 of my conversation with Heather Lovegood. Hello, Heather. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, how are you doing? We did get to chat just a little bit before starting.
Yeah.
How you feeling? You want to check in there?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. A little bit of nerves. I'm noticing that I have legs and checking my surroundings and making sure I'm staying grounded. And taking a look around and arriving,
Yep.
taking
Using
a
all
moment
the
to arrive.
Yep, all the good SE skills.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. How are you?
Well, I am it's been a busy day, so I'm kind of riding the sympathetic, nervous system to
Mm,
the end of my day, I think.
yeah.
As is what I do.
Yeah. Riding
Which,
that stress response highway. I'm just gonna,
oh yeah,
yeah. And that
exactly.
mobilization, right? Like that
Yeah.
energy is mobilization. It helps us keep going. Thank goodness we need it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to orient listeners to how I know you, I always like to give people the behind the scenes.
Yes.
So I saw an astrologer, Dawn Silver, who was on the podcast
Mm,
several years ago, 4 years ago, because it was before the 2020 election.
mm,
And this was like over a year ago. And she was like, you got to watch your lymph. And I'm like, the fuck does that mean? Watch your lymph. And I forgot about it. And then I thought
mhm,
about it again. And I was started having like perimenopause and other health
mhm.
things. And I was seeing my friend Sarah McLaughlin,
Right.
also who's been on the podcast, a massage therapist, and
Mhm,
said, do you know anybody who does lymphatic drainage massage?
mhm.
And she's like, one of my friends sees a practitioner. It's Heather Lovegood. You should check her out.
Nice.
And then I checked you out and it was great. And
Yeah.
the only reason I haven't come back is because there's so many other health things that I'm doing, but I will come
Uh-huh.
see you again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I dug your vibe and all the things. And so I wanted to introduce you to my people.
Lovely. Thank you for that. And it was lovely to meet you and traverse conversations around lymphatics and all the lovely things that happen and are happening for people in perimenopause. Good Lord.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do
So,
you want to share more specifics about who you are in the world and what you're doing?
yeah. So I'm a human being in the world and doing my level best to be the best human being and best version of myself as I can be, which takes something, I tell you. And I'm not the best version of myself all the time, nor is anyone, right? Uh,
Right.
and in the world, I work in the healing arts, and I have for the last, I'm going to try to do math, but since 2007. Let's go there.
Mhm.
Someone else can do math. And so right now my practice is in Andersonville in Chicago, and I offer manual lymphatic drainage and touch work for trauma and resiliency, somatic experiencing, and good old therapeutic massage and body work. And we've in there my background in yoga and meditation, health coaching, because well-being is not so much about like how the wellness industry makes it be. It's well-being, right? Like the ability to feel and be well and have access to well-being as a human. And so I really love that intersection, especially with regard to trauma and how it affects the body, and that with lymphatics. And yeah, it's all connected. There is no thing not connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what led you to somatic work, massage,
Mm.
all of this wellness area?
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. Like if I go all the way back to where it started, I think uh, there was a conversation I had with when I was in high school um, with a friend of my grandmother's. I'm not remembering her name right now, but when I was talking about what to do post high school, she said, go into caregiving. Somebody will always
Mm.
need care. And I was like, all right, that's sound advice, you know?
Mhm.
So I went into nursing, like nursing care, became a certified nursing assistant. And that extrapolated out into working with individuals with different abilities in their home and residences, which intersected with like behavioral health and mental, physical health, all that. And then found my way into dialysis, things,
Oh,
and was
wow.
a dialysis practitioner for a while and supported people on dialysis with their treatments, working with an RN and so forth. And at some point, something in me was like, this is not, it didn't feel right. It didn't
Mm.
resonate. It felt like a model of care that I couldn't quite stomach, to be honest.
Mm.
So I shifted gears. I had gotten a massage at one point. I was like, oh, I could do this. And took a little detour into barber and cosmetology, got a lot of like good reviews, if you will, on my head massages in the shampoo bowl. So I explored massage therapy school and went to a couple different ones. And there were just some that weren't very, they didn't resonate again. Very clinical, and clinical is great and it has its place, but I'm not somebody who's like, let me wear a polo shirt and a pair of khakis and be a clinical massage therapist. So I found myself at this wonderful massage school in Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm from, called Tibia, and it stood for Transformation, Intuition, Bodywork in Action, because the owner loves acronyms. She loves herself an acronym. Everything's an acronym.
I love that.
And I love it. I love it. Bless me, Picasso. And that school. So I came upon that, and it was like, yep, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it was spiritual. It was like, yes, become a massage therapist, but also forget everything you know about being a massage therapist and connect with the energy of the body, the spirit, the soul, and listen from there. And so it was very, like the name said, very intuitive. And about transformation, so woven this piece of spirituality about our being something larger than just this physical body, the energy body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, and transforming things, not just like symptom management, but actual transformation. Like, oh, this thing was here and now it has transformed into something else and it is no longer what it was. And that was life-changing. That program was life-changing for me. I connected to my spirit, what I would consider God, universe, with all that is, which I had a pretty not great relationship with, if any relationship at all. I couldn't say the word God without wanting to vomit. Yeah, I had a very strong influence in my family that was very shaming around religion and whatnot. And so we kind of had it out at some point about that. This was
you and God, or you and your family?
Me and my family, my family member. But it was lovely because then I found my way to that in my own way. And I got to a place where I was like, oh, this is the God that this is what it means for me. This is something I could get behind, and then I could experience that energy and I could experience that love in my body and in my system. And that was something I had never had before. It was always contemptuous, and loaded. So that felt lovely. And it was a beautiful, lovely experience that started my trajectory into all things healing arts. It was like a complete shift in my life, a huge significant moment.
Anne, my co-host, is going to be really mad at me for this. You'll be fine. But I have a theory, and I'm really sorry that I'm just going to say this plain out, but I have a theory that spirit is part of what's missing in our world.
Yeah.
In therapy. Like you said, in clinical massage versus like a more holistic transformational type of massage. And I know so many people who have spiritual wounding that they really struggle to get from, whatever they were raised with to coming to an understanding of their own. And since that was your experience, like listeners have heard mine a million years ago, probably, but I'm curious, like what was it for you? Like what flipped from, I don't like this God thing to, oh, I feel God in my body, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. I'm just taking a moment. I'm getting emotional about it because I'm just really, really appreciative. My teachers there and the space that was held for that. I think, Michaela was unabashed in her love for God and what that was for her.
Mm.
And it wasn't the same for me, as far as like names, and specific people. And it was a class, and I want to say it was a class called Transformational Bodywork. There were 3 different classes. But I just remember we would always play music, and certain music that would stir things. And I just remember being on the table, and there was some song that was playing, and the word God was mentioned. And I think I just experienced surrender instead of resistance.
Oh.
And in that, there just was all this ecstatic energy that just was pure love that flowed through every channel and every muscle and every cell and every tissue of my body. And then I just started laughing hysterically because I was like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense. This I can get behind.
Wow.
This is an unconditional, this is what unconditional love feels like.
Oh my gosh.
It's gentle, it's powerful, it's steady, and it's all pervasive if I just surrender.
Oh.
If I just surrender. And yeah, so that was a pretty, that's a very significant moment for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I am so profoundly moved by that. And your tears and your vulnerability is just so welcome here and so moving. Yeah. And I love, what you said about surrender instead of resistance. This is my first podcast recording post Trump election. And I started reading When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron again.
Yep.
And she reminded me of the things that I've known and I have forgotten.
Yeah.
And one of the things is going towards fear and not resisting against it. And I kind of played with that the other night because I was feeling so much anxiety around what the hell is going to happen in our world. And it's so fascinating to really be with the energy that shows up with emotions and just let them move and let yourself kind of like ride the wave of it. And I don't do that very often. I forget.
Yeah. And this kind of, going, jumping to now in somatic experiencing in the nervous system, right? Like this is why that work is so important, in my opinion, because the body, like you can want to surrender and release into something, but the physiology has its own, the body remembers things. And if it feels overwhelmed by a sensation and that energy, that charge that comes with those emotions, it'll clamp right down, and you're not in control of that. Yeah. And we're not in control of that. And boy, us human beings, we do not like to not be in control, right? But we're not in control of that. The body.
Quit reading my diary. Yeah, right.
But that's part of why we build capacity and resiliency in the body. It's to actually be able to be with the sensation and the immense charge that all these emotions carry, and to not be afraid of them. And so much of the first bits of that work is to take the fear out. Because when the fear is out, then we can access a little bit of curiosity, and then that can soften and we can loosen, and then things can flow through. And it is like a wave, but we're just kind of learning how to surf, right? We got to learn how to surf, or I often will tell clients, we're learning how to deep sea dive. You don't go deep sea diving not having ever tried. That's not going to go very well, right?
Right.
The pressure will be immense. You have to build capacity and tolerance for that pressure and the breath and all these things that go along with it. So anyway, yeah, it is a lot, and it is scary to surrender in the face of fear of the unknown, right?
Right. Yeah, and what what you're saying, you and I have talked about when I've been on your table, right? Like
Mhm.
and I've told the listeners some of this. Like I've been working through like sexual abuse trauma, and literally my muscles they're holding all the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
Pretty much every muscle in my body is constantly holding. And
Correct.
uh the I mean, I have been fighting my body. I have been
Mhm.
fighting my guides that tell me they don't want me to know what happened, right? And I think picking up Pema Chodron's book again is such a good reminder of it's I have to hear things sometimes in a different way, right? Because
Mhm.
like, you can tell me allow, like every my therapist, allow, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. There's something about what I just read and like putting all of this together that I'm like, oh, okay, maybe what I'm doing right now is finally building. I have built my emotional capacity over the
Mhm.
last handful of years. Now I think maybe it's a physical capacity to be with emotion.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, and but of course, like I have to let go of the outcome because
Yeah.
I want to know what happened. God damn it! It was my body. I should get to know.
Yeah.
But like you said, the body's more in charge of that than the mind.
It is. And it's in charge of that, but it will tell you what it wants you to know when it feels like you're ready. And it will speak to
Mhm.
it in a language that's different than the cognition.
Right.
And that's the part that is often difficult for people to surrender into, is that it's not cognitive.
Right.
And whatever happened, it's less about the specifics around something that happened. It's more important what happened in your body and in your physiology
Right.
afterwards, in the years following, after the moment, in the moment. Two people can experience the same thing and have very different experiences of it in their body, because
Right.
it's not just about the event.
Right.
And so that, yeah, building capacity to be with emotion, and mainly not even just emotion, but the sensations in the body that are reminiscent. That's what we have to like build capacity for, to be able to, again, when that wave of sensation comes, it may not even be an emotion, it may literally just be a physical sensation.
Right.
And we have to build the ability to be with it. And like Pema Chodron said, moving towards fear, like, can I be with this? Can I move toward this? Can I lean in to this discomfort without completely dissociating or completely going into a stress response that creates more adrenaline and cortisol and causes more damage to my tissues, more inflammation in my brain? We don't get that inflammation is, the stress causes inflammation. Inflammation is like the root cause of all diseases. And
Mhm.
that heat and that inflammation, we got to cool it down. And that's where lymphatics really helps. If the waters of the body come in to cool that inflammation, to move things through.
Mm.
Yeah. And they also
Mm.
carry the tissue and the memory and in the cells. So
Mm.
sometimes through the body work, that's, coming to the body work piece, when we're moving, it's so cliche, the issues are in the tissues. And it's not wrong.
Right.
Cellular memory, we know cellular memory is a thing. And we're moving cells and tissues and fluids, and they carry wisdom, and they carry the wounds. They
Mhm.
carry it all. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like wellness, mental health, like there was pre-science knowledge, which
Mm-hmm.
is where a lot of Chinese medicine started there. A lot of like great was Ayurveda, right? Like all
Mm-hmm.
of these things started pre-science.
Correct.
And then we were like, no, fuck that shit. Let's just do science. And so science has been king for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what is really beginning to happen is this marriage of the more innate uh, natural wisdom that
Mm-hmm.
was created pre-science and science. And don't hate me, Anne, but if we bring in spirituality with it too,
Mm-hmm.
how many more options we have
Yeah.
than just science.
Yeah. Well, and this is a part of Indigenous wisdom and what colonization has done to these things,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to acknowledge that, any of the wisdom that comes in any of these practices that contain spirituality are intrinsically indigenous in their roots. And
Right.
there was no separation of spirit and body. I don't know any indigenous practice that does not have those two things completely paired with
Right.
nature, with spirit. There's no separation. It's not, yeah. And so, when you kind of said that you think that's what's missing in these fields and so forth, the lovely thing about science is now it's proving all these things. It's proving, intergenerational trauma, and it's proving, epigenetics, and that things, get turned on, genes get turned on, genes can get turned off.
Mm-hmm.
The metaphysical, which is the spiritual, and, the macro, the cosmos out and the cosmos in. It's a psychedelic experience in here, and it's also out there. And again, there's no thing separate from any other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even as we sit here right now, the skin is touching the air and the clothing. Gravity has us pinned to whatever we're sitting on. The breath that I breathe in gets transmuted and then comes back out, and then the plants breathe in what I'm breathing out. There's no separation.
Mm-hmm.
And in our body, there's no separation, no tissue, bone, cell, fluid, anything that's not connected to something else.
Right.
And so we are together. Yeah. And that gets missing, that part is missing. And the spiritual piece is that I think is really important right now, that I feel, I'm working to hold on to and practice as best I can, is that the spirit that's within us, it can never be taken without our permission. And even then, it can't ever really truly be taken.
Mm.
There is something there
Mm-hmm.
in everybody, in every being, in everything. I would say every being, every plant, every animal, not just human being,
Mm-hmm.
that can never be eliminated. It can never die. It can never be squashed. And so much of why that's important right now is because that the threats that are out there, the power over, the occupation of all these things, will have us believe that it'll completely obliterate us, and we'll lose, things, and there will be loss, and there will be things that happen. And it is an act of resistance and resilience to stay connected to that pure thing within you, that source, to be resourced, to rest into, to connect with. And that's a place of power, to not lose that connection and to cultivate it and to see it in others. That's the other piece, is to also get that if it's in me and it's in you, it's in everyone. And then that begs the question, well, then what's hiding that expression?
Right.
Why are the reasons that that's not expressed in some and it's expressed in others? And then we circle back to trauma. Go figure.
Right.
And but I think it's important, to, in these times, find rest and connection. And it's hard. The urgency of the times wants us to, there's an impulse to stay active, to keep going, to keep pressing, to keep pushing. And there needs to be a balance. We can't keep going so hard all the time without taking a moment, pause, to come back and center into self and rest and repair, rejuvenate. Athletes have to do it. Have to modulate that. So I don't think it's any different with spirituality. I think it's more important, quite honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about, interconnectedness and spirit and all that, it just reminded me of, in The Right Use of Power. Have I told you about Right Use of Power?
Maybe, but tell me again.
Well, you need to go to a training because you will love them. Right Use of Power.
Oh.
Yes, you got to go. You're going to love it.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that, because one of my teachers, who's an ethics teacher at the massage school I went to, Kathy Ginn, that was, I believe that's actually the framework of most of her ethics classes. And I remember a very significant moment of talking about power and right use of power, and that exercise, I lost my shit. It actually took me out. I had a huge trigger around it. She modulated how she said the word power in different ways. And there was one way she said the word power, and my whole system, I was just flooded. And I went and I laid down on a table somewhere else. I left the class and got some hands-on love to bring my system back. And then I took the class later, and I've taken a couple of her classes. So I'm curious if it's the same kind of framework.
Yeah. I bet she probably was introduced to it by Cedar Barstow, who's the founder, and then now it's transformed and kind of. Well, the thing I was going to say about it is, they started with personal power, role power, and status power, and then have added collective power and systemic power. But then now we're talking about universal power, essentially being spirit and like the whatever it is that connects us, like through that mycelial network, right? And right. And
just naming that, I was like,
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go take a training. You're going to love them so much. It's everybody go rightuseofpower.org.
Please get in touch with right use of power. It's very important.
Right. Especially for people in healing professions. And I mean, something that I imagine that you probably see in the massage world, but maybe it shows up differently in the therapy world, because so many of us have been harmed by power. And that's why we go into caretaking professions. We tend to act as if we don't have power rather than respect the power that we have and own that, and not power over, power with, empowering our clients and our patients, right? But when we pretend like we don't have it, that's an actual misuse of power.
Right. Well, and I would even extrapolate on that a little bit and it's kind of part of the work I'm leaning into now, is really recognizing, like, I'm not actually empowering anything with my clients. Like, if I say I'm empowering them, I'm taking their power away.
Ooh.
I don't have the ability to empower somebody. I can empower myself. And maybe in my doing so and demonstrating and modeling that, something is inspired.
Yeah.
But this trust that, like, really, really leaning in. And I mean, there's so much conditioning and unlearning I have to do, and will probably in perpetuity be unlearning, right?
Yeah.
But so much of it is the belief that people don't have everything they need, when really they do.
Right.
And that is the wisdom of the body and the spirit. Like, we really do have everything we need. And I have seen now through this work, especially through transforming touch for trauma, and even yoga nidra, the practice of yoga of sleep, which is not really sleep, but it's rest, deep sleep, rest, sleep awake states. The power of doing nothing. Literally doing nothing with my clients, doing nothing, just being, allowing the body to just be. And if it has the conditions it needs, it will start to do what it needs to do. It will heal, it will clean house, it will bring stuff to the fore for you to metabolize, to process, to work through, if the conditions are right. And all I can do is provide the space for the conditions to be right. And then the body will do what it needs to do. And in that, I've noticed clients find their power. They go, oh, I didn't know that could happen. You mean really? I can just be with that, and that just unfolded? Oh. And then you see the lights come on in the eyes, and it's just like, and then they, oh, look, now I have access to their power and the power of their body and their capacity. So not to discount, I don't want to like poo-poo on anyone who's like in the world of empowerment. So I'm like noticing a part of me that's like, oh no, I said a thing and it's going to piss people off.
That's okay. We like to piss
It's
people off
okay.
here.
Yeah. I'm in perimenopause. I'm learning how to piss people off.
That's right.
I'm out to just piss people off left and right now. That's what's up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I honestly wouldn't argue with what you said, and I mean, all of that. I probably know the answer to this question now, but would you consider yourself a healer?
It's so funny because ever since you invited me to this, I thought I had knew what I wanted to say about that, right?
Mm.
And then my relationship to it has changed. And I kind of like, and I like that because it's like, oh, right. Our relationship to things, our views, our perceptions can change at any moment if we just let them.
Yep.
And so and actually it's very correlate to what you said about power and how if we don't kind of own, how did you say it? Like if it's a misuse of power by discounting our power, right?
Yep.
Some iteration of that you said.
Yep.
And so I'm actually in this lovely class with a practitioner that I really enjoy, Yoli, and it's a decolonization toolkit for body workers.
Ooh.
And it's lovely. And in our class, she spoke about healers and about the word healers, and that some people don't like to use that word, right? And some people do, and that in Indigenous cultures, healers a very, a revered, word and status to have, and there's honoring and understanding and respect for people who hold that role in the community. And her saying that had me go, oh, okay, I've had the view that I don't want to be a healer because I feel like that again takes power away from the person whose body's wisdom heals itself. So what am I actually doing in that role other than witnessing, the innate healer within someone else? And I'm in this realm of healing work, right? So am I, via the words and the verbiage, a healer? And I still want to play with that, but I've softened around it now, where I before would say, I don't want to be called a healer.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that responsibility. And I think the words, as we're just kind of unpacking this now, I think that the words don't matter as much as what the intention is and the perception and the belief behind it. Right?
Boom.
If someone comes to me and says, oh, you're a healer, and they give their power to me, that's misuse of power. And that puts me in more responsibility than I could actually own at any point.
Yeah.
And similarly, if I don't own my role in our partnership and the work we're doing, I'm not honoring the work I've done to provide a space that they could heal inside of.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it now. As far as the word healer, I'm working to own it a little bit more, and also inside of kind of trying to traverse finding my own cultural lineage of things, spiritual practices or roots of things. I came across Hungarian shamanism. My grandmother on my dad's side is Hungarian and came from Hungary. And so I had this place of like, oh, and I was reading through this beautiful article, and I can't remember, I would love to cite the resource, but I can't remember it right now. I can tell you later. But it just made so much sense that I found myself to Eastern practices, because there's an intersection there that got woven into Hungarian culture and Hungarian shamanism, and it came from Eastern practices. And so it landed in my body like, oh, okay, I feel like I can own this a bit more now and be okay with that I found my way here. Because it is from a deep appreciation and from a necessity, paired, right? Like most things are. There's the desire and a love for something, whatever, and there's the trauma response.
Right.
That it comes from, right? Like you said, like sometimes out of our trauma, we decide to come into these caregiving professions, right? but it's not just that. There's also the love for something, or the belief for me in that there's something more possible. Something more is possible. Healing is possible.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel like you're really teasing into some of the fine nuances.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this question on the surface, people have answered it, 250 plus times on
Mm-hmm.
this podcast before. And sometimes people answer it quickly and I don't want to say on the surface, but kind
Mm-hmm.
of shallowly.
Yeah.
And when I think about my relationship to this, because I came into this thinking we're all healers, we're all wounded healers. Just like you said, we all have this inside of us. It's just uncovering from
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And so that's what I've always come in with. And so there's a part of me that always wants people to say, yes, I'm a healer, but from this place of having gone through what you are saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to, like, because I can think about my relationship with power and the way that I would put people on pedestals and then
Yeah.
inevitably they would fall off.
Yep.
Right. And I didn't realize until really, really getting in touch with my own agency and not being threatened by my own agency.
Mm-hmm.
Can I appreciate somebody else's wisdom without making them a guru?
Yeah.
Right? Even
Yep.
in the subtlest of ways.
Yeah.
I noticed that even I've done that with friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming this person must know more than me.
Right.
And so that's a very subtle way of giving away your power.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love what you're saying that there's no yes and there's no no.
Yeah.
Around this question. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like most things, especially in the universe and spirituality, whatnot, everything's paradoxical. And it's two sides of the same coin. And so again, it comes through like, which lens are we looking at it through? What's the context? And again, are we giving away our power to something, or are we assuming too much power and going into our egos about something and not practicing humility? Because nothing, again, full circle back to the God conversation in the beginning, nothing's ours.
Right.
Nothing's ours. It all comes through the universe. It all comes through that energy, that source. And even our most beautiful ideas, our intuition, our creativity comes from somewhere.
Right. And where are the words for this? Because you're getting into this like subtle energy stuff that can I allow my ego to go to the side to know that and allow my agency to come forth to feel empowered by that simultaneously.
Yeah, to be in relationship with it.
Right.
Here is this spirit, here's this energy, and I am also this being that can work with it and use it and craft it and give space for it and step aside, but I still have to make the choice to step aside and let it move through, as I'm working with people, as I'm in relationship with people, or I can choose not to. And that's usually when I'm not being my best self.
Yeah. Well, and this is so out there, but it's really making me think, because I have decided that when I die, I better get all the answers to all the fucking questions. What is Bigfoot? I want to know about Mothman. I want to know why the fuck we're here. But for serious, this is just making me think like that answers the question of why humans exist. If we are God or the universe's way to express this creative energy. I mean, I am not saying I have the answer, but with all this kind of stuff, I like to make up an answer and be like, that feels good. I'm gonna live in that.
I got chills. I got chills when you said that, and I think we all have our role to play. If it were the theater, right? Everyone has a role, everyone has a part, and it takes all the parts to make it go. Everyone has a role to play, and if we go, oh, but that role, we have the ability to be anything on the human spectrum, and that's part of it too, the play, to be like, ooh, it's not such a strength for me. Let me experience that way of being, ooh, let me experience this way of being, this expression, that expression. We could play around with that instead of being so fixed in one particular way or identify in one particular way.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
Well, yeah. And speaking of identities, how do you feel about wounded healer?
Yeah, I've been carrying a lot of, I think, imposter syndrome about that. And I think you and I talked about that when we first started, and that my relationship and as I've been thinking about that has also changed, which I love. And so I've softened around that as well, and realizing, kind of like I said, the paradoxical nature of things, like it requires both. And, in a lot of the teachings and materials and trainings I've taken, there's always the both and of it. Nobody is unscathed. We all have wounds, and often, as one of the authors that I really love, Pixie Lighthorse,
yes,
the wound makes medicine. And even inside of somatic experiencing, Peter Levine, has his autobiography out now, and shares his story and how, he was teaching somatic experiencing to people. And then at some point he was like, I think I better have some of the people I've trained help me heal my shit. And that helped me be like, okay, so here's this international organization with all these practices, and the founder and the creator and, all that stuff, obviously pulling from Indigenous practices throughout the world and his, science background, developed it, trained it, helped so many people with it. And then eventually at some point came into the place where he could start to do his own healing, and so I think I've held some judgment of myself for not being perfect, nod to white supremacy culture.
Right.
Thanks for that indoctrination.
Right.
And now I softened around it. It's like, nope, this is parallel. Like if, Ram Dass would say, we're all just walking one another home. And if that's the case, I'm a human being. I am going through what I'm going through. I have the wounds that I carry from my childhood, from my middle school, adult life, my, like all of my life. And I'm still practicing and walking these practices and supporting people through them as well. And there is, a relationship where I can only support somebody as far as I've gone, and that's okay. And that's why we find the people that we need at different times, because we're in different places. And as I progress and move through my healing, then I will have those things, those gifts, those nuggets to bring to my practice, and so it's, again, all connected. So I think actually it's required. I actually think it's a rite of passage. I think that part of what's been missing in our culture is people being uninitiated, right? People being initiated. And that's the initiation. When you are wounded and you start to do that work on your wounds, that's an initiatory process. I don't know if any of that made sense, but that's what I got.
Oh, damn straight.
Wounded healer. That's what I got.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we're human beings in the world. Like I have to live my life, and so it doesn't stop. If everybody stopped, if everybody who's in a healing profession stopped because they weren't completely healed, we would have hardly anybody available for anybody, anything.
Right.
That's my firm belief.
Yeah.
And maybe that's selling people short, but I just feel like if that's the expectation we're holding people to, and that doesn't mean do harm,
Right.
Be responsible with your wounding, be aware of it, so that you don't keep perpetuating it. And if you do, clean it up best you can, if you're given the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. See, I knew this would be amazing. Look at you.
Yeah, thanks.
I am very good at picking out podcast guests. You are an amazing one. So
Thank you.
The nerves
I
hope have gone away.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, right? And this is such a great example of everything we talked about around following creative flow, the energy that's in the present moment, inspiration, all these things, because I thought I knew what this conversation might be like.
Yeah.
And I had all my worries and concerns and anticipations of what might be brought up, and it didn't go that way. And if I'm rigid about that or stuck to some sort of agenda or a fixed way of like, well, I thought this was how it was going to go, so it's got to go that way, then I would be blocking that flow. And I love how this went. I think it followed the threads it needed to follow, and I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, where can people find you?
The easiest thing is through my website, and it's pretty simple. It's just heatherlovegood.com. I don't much on social. I have an Instagram page, but I never use it. It's a placeholder. I even said that I'm like, this is a placeholder. Do not DM me here through my website.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's really it. And offering bodywork in person. I have the ability to do virtual sessions. I've been playing around with offering a workshop series in somatic experiencing, kind of like the foundations of these practices for regulation and just to, again, bring that inflammation down. But I'm available for virtual sessions as well as in person.
Awesome. Well, go to Heather's website right now, heatherlovegood.com. Thank you so much for being here. This really was, it was everything I expected it to be, which was amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate the gift and the opportunity to riff on sexuality with you.
Absolutely. Thanks to our guest for an amazing episode. To find out more about our guests, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast. You can find me at headheartbiztherapy on both Facebook and Instagram. Thanks to the Jules Creative Marketing team for video editing, to Liam O'Donnell for our album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. And I'm your host, Sarah Buino. Until next time, bye-bye.